this is my little show.
Sorry about that.
You can.
These are things that I've been working on / collecting, finding for primarily over the past like 3 years. But a couple things are like from deep in the past, like that drawing that's over the door, circa age 5 maybe, something like that. But yeah, so I think like the show loosely, the title that I went with, which is also the title of this zine that I made like to sort of mark the occasion of the show, is Post-Anhedonia. Kind of like thinking about, sort of like reemergence and sort of confronting myself amid getting divorced a few years ago. So that was a very like pivotal turning point in my life. And this show is somewhat like a rearview mirror look back at that chapter of my life. So like everything, geographically, everything in this room is like Houston. That's where I was living when I was married and when I got divorced. And it was an interesting chapter of my life because I didn't really sort of set out to live in Houston for a big chunk of my life, but I spent 5 years there, bookended by Hurricane Harvey and the freeze event, so 2 climate catastrophes. And like I've done work in like sort of materials science, plastics, petrochemicals. That's been like a pet interest of mine, research-wise, artistically, intellectually, like forever. And so getting to live in Houston, which is like literally like the belly of the beast of like where a lot of that stuff is produced in America, and sort of extracted. It's very close. There's like an oil refinery within the city limits. It's like, so thinking about being like that close to all of that, and the sort of attendant disasters that are sort of commonplace there, that can happen, felt like it's like an experience I'm very glad that I had. It's sort of like getting to be up close to a lot of that extractive industry. I don't know, I mean, it kind of hit the spot for me, like it needed to happen. And I think, so there's a lot of like ambivalent feelings that I have about like the place and the geography that this work is about. And then also too with like the personal layer, like this was a period of time where I was very isolated with COVID and just like the sort of small, sort of almost like working my life down to the nub of like just my neighborhood. And so there's a lot of work that sort of is like geographically tagged to even like a 5-block radius of like the house that I was living in when I was married. And so it was like the kind of situation where everything looked fine, but I was silently extremely unhappy, and kind of really tamping down for a long time, like tamping down whatever parts of myself would instinctively like come up to tell me that I was actually unhappy, and that became increasingly sort of untenable, something that I would liken to like an aging refinery that has, you know, sort of rusted components that's constantly running and you never really shut it down, but disaster doesn't happen like out of nowhere. It's like something wearing thin over time. So like a lot of things in my work, I think about like accretion and decay and like debris and degradation and things like that, on terms that are, it's like always sort of like a 2-sided coin. Like there's like a personal interior side, and then there's like a sort of like material or like non-alive side, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of like a little bit about where my head was at when I made some of this work. I don't know. There's a few things that I actually literally made today that I can like cop to doing my homework at the last minute. So maybe, I don't know, we might like go in there at some point. But I guess like I'm gonna sort of pass a few things around first. Maybe, so these cards, I planned on doing a whole deck, and I will, but I didn't get around to finishing it, and that's like a theme, like a million half-started things in my life. But yeah, these are sort of like beginnings of I mean, I hate to say like personal tarot deck, but like just sort of some sort of like divination mechanism that I could potentially use to like sort of draw connections laterally from symbols that I've sort of just like ascribed significance to because I felt like it, or for a variety of reasons. So I'm just sort of like, yeah, I'm very interested in like luck and chance and sort of that kind of thing. So that felt like a way to maybe bring that into this like talk experience. So like if one of them, if you want to draw a random one and ask me about it, or if one of them falls down on the ground or whatever, I don't know, maybe I'll talk about that, but I won't talk about all of them. That just seemed like I wanted to throw a little bit of like luck in the mix. And then, okay, the other thing that I wish I had more copies of, but this is a piece of writing that's sort of like, I would say like very much like companion to what is on view. This was something that I wrote like last August, September, sort of during like a very like pitch point of like high emotion. But it's sort of like, it was sort of like a document from a point of clarity that I now wish I could go back to and live in all the time. But it's sort of like looking backwards and forwards at the same time, of like very like loosely concatenated narrative. And I think all of that is to say that like there's a wordy dimension to what I'm doing that I haven't quite figured out, like how the words fit with like what with visuals and whatnot. So I'm about to go back to school and maybe figure that out. But there are words. I don't really know what to do with them very much, but
read some.
What?
Yeah.
Read some? Oh God, that's terrible. I mean, the thing that's funny about this is like, it's very much like, I'm a child of the internet, and this was written in my notes app, and so there's certain things that are like, there are emojis, there are redactions, there are like strike-throughs and things that I'm like, I don't know how you verbally talk about that, you know, like how do you, like, so I actually don't know how I would read certain sections of this. I don't know what part of it I would read.
Let the tarot choose.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, yeah,
She said
exactly. Yeah,
that.
like just, yeah. Somebody give me a number. How about that?
Oh, I can choose one.
Yeah,
from the
choose
deck.
one. Choose one.
Ace of Spades.
Okay, because there's no number associated.
The
with
Happy
that.
Apple.
The Happy Apple. Okay. And let me see if I'm trying to think if like the Happy Apple is in this. The Happy Apple is in. Well, I'm gonna get to the other thing. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to pass around is the memo book. So this is the second one. The first one is on loan. But this is like my little sketchbook. But it's sort of also like, I guess like the temporally linear progression of like what I'm thinking about and doing. And then this is like sort of very mixed up, but there's some things that are like repeated here and there, and like,
Is this
I don't
apple
know.
in there?
Is the Happy Apple in here?
We're in here.
It's in the first one that Catherine has right now. Actually, I lent it to one of my soon-to-be professors. I don't know. I think we need another number.
Okay.
8. Okay. Thank you very much.
I like the waxy feel of these. Ava, you're gonna talk about the wax frame.
Oh yeah, so like the cards and all of the drawings in there, basically everything that's not printed or oil painted is done in like wax crayon China marker. I just work in red, yellow, and blue, and then a white oil pastel to like sort of blend. And I work one color at a time and layer it. So like all of the drawings are all just, so like color is mixed like in the field. So like it's just like the red, yellow, and blue crayons.
Ava, this came up too.
Oh yeah, that's the Houston loop, the 610 loop. And yeah, so like now I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but okay.
We're just like bombarding you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Okay, so I will read from page 8. Why not? Okay. A suitcase from the Goodwill bins in Delaware, chalkware, state-sponsored by DuPont, a tax heaven, not for sale at any price. My grind set, it's fraying. I'm a post-ambitious baby crawling without its feet. The sad dog, a sultry, hastily spray-painted, a dark stain on the heart, wreathed in my grandmother's lei from Hawaii because I do know how to throw a party, it's in my blood. Better to give than to receive. The window of the U-Haul truck must be taped closed each time. Maggie dog rides in the middle, a crop duster swoops low overhead, swoops over my shoulder, or over his, or over my grandfather's. This time we were in Kansas, I think. Anyway, it was flat and I was on my way to get married. She told her boyfriend she fell in love tonight, and I was like, girl, you have no idea how much sense that makes to me, you get me. And we both know how, redacted. I need to look in y'all's mirrors. I have to return to every place that formed me, the nausea and vertigo, the come up, the skyline, some movie projected onto the very surface of the United Nations. Please use a coaster made of rubber that I found on the ground in Hamtramck. The previews of your vision are about to begin. Reacquaint yourself with the resolution target, the dollar store, that book you ghost wrote all of your notes, the treasure map. An airbrush tee that says, is this spiritual psychosis or am I finally having a good time? Or, get in winter, we're going crazy. Or, I need a special license to upright myself. Or, divorce yourself from reality. Or, perhaps most pertinently, ask me about my soft power. Learn to sing for real, or at least loud. I'll stop there. But yeah, it goes on like that for quite a while, and it's also mixed in with sort of images that were, are and are not related in various ways. And yeah, sort of a slice of something that I hope to maybe do more of. Who knows where that will go? Who knows where any of this will go? But yeah, I guess I will stop pontificating at y'all, but if anyone has any questions, I would love to talk about.
Describe the series.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this series on this wall right here is called Loop Sequence, and it is not finished right now. It will be a series of 140 drawings that are screen grabs from a video that I took driving the 610 loop in Houston right before I moved away. Just sort of my like goodbye to the city in that period of my life. And it's like a highway to nowhere. And so much of the experience of living in Houston is like this ultra American, just like driving endless, wide highway, like 10 lanes, sort of drifting experience. And so to do it sort of purposefully do the whole thing was really interesting, because like I had driven the loop like a ton, and I did so much driving, but like I had never like done it ritualistically, I guess, like that until but I just like had to do it before I left. It was like really necessary, and I knew I wanted to make something out of that at some point. And so yeah, it started in December. I went back and like sort of let Photoshop choose what the frames were going to be. So it's sort of a random grab bag. Some of them are interesting to draw, some of them are really not that interesting to draw. And yeah, I think the idea was sort of like thinking about like making a challenge for myself that's sort of like monotonous, but it's also like sort of transforms at a slow rate that can only be seen when you zoom out. So like there's, my style sort of evolves, and like I switched pastels at one point, and I'm sure you can tell exactly where that is, and it's like they're not going to be exactly consistent. And I mean, you'll see this with, like, the prints that I have too. It's like there is no such thing as an exact replica, but that's certainly definitely true when you're trying to make sort of frames, animated frames, I guess, in a way. But yeah, so there eventually will be 140 of them, and they will slot into the 140 slots on a slide carousel projector, and sort of be ordinately arranged with, north and east and south and west as the loop is, so sensically and logically. And yeah, so like that's gonna be done by September, hopefully.
So you draw each one from
yes.
still,
Uh-huh.
not projected?
No, yeah, so like I did, to make it easier for these, I did use my projector to trace like little guides for myself so that I'm not trying to eyeball placement of these like little tiny things each time. So in that way it kind of becomes a little bit like rote, I guess, especially because like some of the things like the dashboard of the car, it's like the same every time. So I'm like, okay, I start with green, and then I do blue, and then I do red, and then I do another blue down here, and then I do another green, and then and it's like sort of like I'm a printer basically. And so like that's an interesting piece of it, where like some of those things stay constant, and some of them like it'll be like a month between me doing the drawings. I'll forget like how was I doing this guy again? So like I'll try and do it the same, but like so like there's sort of this tension between like I want it to be a machine and be perfect, and like give myself this challenge to like do a lot of something or whatever, and I love to set that forth, and I like kind of hate to do it, or like it's hard, or it's impossible, or I don't know. I hate it. Yeah, so that's a lot evident in the work as well. Yeah.
Can you talk about like repetition and why so many things are cyclical for you?
Okay, yeah. So like, I guess, yeah, I keep bringing up like the loop and these sort of like cardinal directions and things like that. This is where my parents come into the picture. They are architects. The house I grew up in is like a sundial, sort of like oriented to like solar north-south, and it's like very sort of cardinal direction in sync. And so I grew up having like a really locked in sense of that, like spatially, and like where the sun is and everything, and that is like such a huge part of like how I see the world basically, and how I like navigate and orient through space. And I've also like career-wise done a lot of work in wayfinding and like signage and systems design. So like there's like a piece of my brain that's very much like sort of orients space in this like sort of circle that's like directional, and that is also like sort of how my conception of time is, which is like kind of like a spiral sort of ascending. But there are like, and I think that the reason it's counterclockwise, but the reason is because I think of like east over here and west over here. So like it's like very like map based. So like time for me, like if I'm standing at like the new year, it goes up like this, and there's like the spring equinox, and there's like the summer, and there's the fall, and it like goes like this. And so there's like, when I think about memory, everything is like tagged to a geographic location in the real world, but also like to a like spatial, temporal, like internal location for me, that like then that puts it on like a vector where like you could in theory like draw a connection from that point to like anything else that's of significance to me. And there's like a particular like view that is created, and some of them are really not interesting. Like sometimes like there's nothing there, and it's just a big giant pile of crap that like Bill has to wade through in my house or our house, because I just have like, I will have accumulated too many like objects, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with all of this stuff? And then other times it's like extremely apparent like what the purpose of something is, and like I feel very decisive about what I'm doing. But regardless, I think I'm very interested in like exploring all of those kinds of like connections, and like I'm very interested in like how other people sort of internally conceptualize like memory and like numbers and space and time and stuff like that, because I have heard descriptions that sound very similar to what I imagine in my head, and then other ones are like, oh my gosh, like no, like it's, you know, very off-putting to be like, oh, your time goes that direction for you, like no. But yeah, so I just think it's interesting. It's, you know, it's very personal fingerprint. But yeah, so I think some of the like anything that's sort of like grouped together, the arrangements or sort of like facile like grouping objects is like a easy way to like sort of explore those types of connections. I'm trying to think about like, as I go into grad school, starting to like take bookmarking and like research bookmarking more seriously and try to connect like ideally the same system like to like real things and things that I make and also things that I like read and find and like internet junk. Who knows whether that will even be possible, but like I feel like I've been like accidentally doing a lot of like sort of gathering of things that I like am now ready to put into use, and so I'm trying to like become more purposeful. Like, you know, I mean, it was only like this past year that I could admit that I wanted to be an artist. So that is like a big thing that is good, and also like I feel like it's just like, oh, you just have to keep turning towards the thing that's like scary. That's like the only way to get out. And yeah, so that's like a funny anecdote that sort of like, I guess I'll end on, is that right around the time that I was going through the divorce, my ex was training jujitsu, and it was the pandemic, so in the absence of anyone else to train with, we were training together. And so we were spending our days literally fighting. Like literally fighting, like, and the symbolism is just so on the nose, you know. But one of the things that I learned in jujitsu is you have to turn towards your attacker to free yourself. So like if someone comes at you from behind, you have to turn towards them in order to get free. And yeah, that's true.
Does that mean you were afraid of being an artist?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, I think you know, like when you feel connected to something, but it's scary, so you're like, oh, I'm gonna go in the opposite direction, or I'm not even gonna look at that. Like, that, you know, blank thing is like probably what you actually want, you know?
The blank spot is the destination.
Correct.
Ava said that very casually in conversation at one point.
That's what I was talking about, yeah.
Now I know.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so like that's sort of all in the mix for me. Yeah, the like sort of like cycles and things like returning, if they happen to fall on sort of the same column of the year, those things feel intrinsically connected. And if it's like, I mean, it's not like rocket science, it's like, you know, the way light looks, the way things smell, like flowers, like all of, just like, I feel like we're collectively like sort of having, like that's what I love about seasons, is like we're like collectively dreaming, like, you know, sort of like what it feels like. Everyone knows what it feels like when it's spring, you know? And like, I don't know. But I also kind of have that on a personal level where like certain things like feel very strongly like the ghost of like a certain memory, but like for everyone else it's just Tuesday. So yeah. Oh yeah, no.
I literally thought of like 10 questions I wanted to ask
Okay.
you, because everything that you said was just really interesting, and you have like a lot of words and tools like to choose from. What are your dreams like?
Oh.
I ask because I do see that I
Yeah.
sometimes communicate and write in similar ways.
Yeah.
And also I have a lot, when I have really meaningful, like memorable dreams, they're always like the end of the fucking world.
Mhm.
And there's fire, and there's like tornadoes
Yeah.
made of lightning, and there's like, you know, industrial sort of like
Yeah.
devastation and shit. But I have a friend who always dreams in space, and everything's very cardinal because she's inside of this Victorian home in like all of her memorable dreams. And I'm
Oh,
wondering,
interesting. Yeah.
are either of those at all like what's going on in your brain when you sleep?
Yeah, so there's like recurring imagery and like scenes and locations. I would say number one thing is like trains coming out of nowhere, like something turning suddenly into a train track and just a train coming at me. That's huge, huge in my dreams. Yeah, just like it'll be like totally normal dream and then I think that's yeah. So that is like really a big one. Yeah. And then. Not always. Sometimes it becomes like a plot point.
Yeah.
Like running out of the way, like whatever. And then another one, I have like an intense phobia of deep swimming pools. Only if they're rectilinear. Kidney-shaped pools, totally fine with me. Just round, good. Like big box, like something. If this room were filled with water, like fuck no. Like, and I know how to swim, but like just the feeling of my legs like dangling and seeing the like dark corners and like it's just like it is like the most like
the drain.
yeah, the drains at the bottom, like it's just like not. And so that kind of environment.
So man-made, scary man-made
Yes.
things, really.
Yeah,
So
scary
by looking
man-made
at this like fire over there.
Yes, and so yeah, and like those kinds of like industrial landscapes are like they also come up in my dreams and also are like some of my favorite landscapes in reality. They're beautiful, and also very ugly. But yeah, so like that kind of stuff is like super like what it.
The ones you write down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's sort of what it looks like. I should get back into your journaling. I've been like so off of it, but Bill always asks you.